Cool. So the next kind of chunk of my talk is about when you're already going, you're developing, you have efficient ways of producing code and producing serverless infrastructure ready. And then you kind of reach a scale where you actually have users, it's in production. So there's the next kind of big problem that we see. And kind of the idea or kind of the main principle of that problem is that when you kind of reach hundreds of resources that are being used by the end user, the complexity grows quickly because you have like a lot of surface area to cover in terms of the data that your application is producing. And there's a lot of risk in all of those different resources. And to manage that risk is really important. So just an example, this is our infrastructure, I think like a year or two ago. Right now it's significantly bigger, but you get the idea, like services all over the place, a lot of communication. So yeah, to kind of be more concrete, there's two main things that we see that users are struggling with. Amount of data is the first one, and kind of general know-how team-wide about what's happening in the system and kind of knowing the system in and out. Like a quick example why this is so complex is that every resource you have in the cloud has like 5 or more metrics, and it produces logs and tracing data. It has a configuration. You can have those resources across regions, across AWS accounts, and you end up with this kind of unimaginable amount of data that is being produced all of the time. It's really hard to understand and observe. The second part is that basically the known and unknown failures. Every point in your system is a potential point of failure. Lambdas can have code exceptions, timeouts, whatever. APIs can time out. Any resource basically can be configured in a way that makes it not work. You can have like API limits, concurrency limits, throughput limits, misconfiguration, delays. So that's kind of the reality. When you put something into production, you're never going to know how the users are going to actually use it and what's going to happen. The good news, however, is that all of the managed services in AWS or in any kind of cloud provider are what we call observable. That means that like you can understand the inner state of all of those services by looking at the outputs. So all of the data is actually there. 99% of the relevant information already exists in AWS in some way or another, whether it's CloudWatch logs, in X-ray traces, in CloudWatch metrics, in configurations, in changes of the configuration, in like access logs, whatever, but it's usually there. You can figure it out through AWS. The problem is it takes huge amounts of time. It's super complex, and it takes time to discover that there's failures, and it takes time to understand the root cause of those failures. So two kind of things that we think are super important to achieve for monitoring. First one is kind of being able to interrogate the data that's already in the cloud efficiently. This is the first thing that we do as a platform, and that's one of the main reasons why Dashboard exists. So there's other tools that also try to do this. Our approach is mainly based around centralization and making the data accessible and like navigable. So we try to break down the silos between logs and metrics and traces, meaning if there's a kind of a Lambda execution, then we can connect that to an X-ray trace. We can extract the metadata, we can understand what happened before and after, and we can give you kind of a breakdown of the situation. And we can do that across regions, across accounts. And we also try to give you a way to kind of look at the data from different angles. So you can look at the metrics and then go to the logs, so you can look at the logs and then see what kind of metrics are associated with it, or kind of how a request flows from one side to the other. And we try to give you kind of an end-to-end view from account to transaction level. And we do that by also by being really elastic. So you can push as much data into the system, and it will always work. We're automatically ingesting all of the data. All of the resource changes will be automatically covered in the platform. The second part that we try to do really well is defending the customer against known and unknown failures. So we see the problem in large applications being twofold. Identifying failures are kind of what they call mean time to discovery. Means that if something happens across the application, to know about it at all. Worst case scenario is that you hear about it from your customers, or you discover it by just looking at the website at some point. So the first thing that we do is we try to minimize the time it takes to discover issues. The second part is we try to point you to the root cause as quickly as possible. In other words, mean time to resolution. So that's the other kind of metric that we're really focused on as a platform, and that's what we aim to do for the customers. So our approach to monitoring, to recap, there's actually 3 pillars. I didn't cover the last one. We bring all of the data together. We make it simple to understand, and there's as little extra overhead for developers as possible. We detect the failures. We make sure that your application doesn't break, or if it does, for you to have the ability to react. And we manage also the posture and security of your application by scanning it in real time and giving you a list of insights and things to do. So this is the last slide before the thank you slide. Everything I talked about just now is can be worded as operational excellence, and it takes a lot of time and effort to actually achieve it across the organization. And on top of the things I already mentioned, I would say the well-architected framework and the serverless lens of that is super useful, really eye-opening, and I think that's another material that you should be looking at. And what we've kind of utilized in the past a lot is AWS solution architects. If you're kind of selecting between services to use, or kind of how to architect an application, all of those kinds of questions you might have, chances are they've seen it working in some other company. They can kind of give you the best advice. So use that. Don't be the guinea pig for everything you want to test. And yeah, there's a growing ecosystem of different tools that Sven already showed in multiple slides. So those tools are there for a reason, and some of them are really useful. So I think to win with serverless, definitely play around with those, see if you like any of them. And thank you.